everyone. Thank you for coming out. Hope you grab some pizza before we get started. And thanks for bearing with us with our technical difficulties. So I want to welcome Tyler Stack. He is the product manager for Orenda Software Solutions, and he's going to talk a little bit about what they do and what they've been working on the last few years.
Okay.
Do you want to come up, or you're going to stay there?
I'm going to stay here.
Oh no. That's gonna suck for video, Tyler. Can you? Yeah.
You want it?
Okay, we're going to make you come up here then. You don't get a choice.
Are you going to?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. She said I had an option, but not really. Whatever you're comfortable with. No.
Good job.
All right. Thank you, Holly.
Oh, you're welcome.
Hello, everyone. So as Holly said, I'm Tyler Stack. I don't know. A lot of you are new faces. I don't know any of you. So whenever I meet new people, I just like to give them a background. So my name is Tyler Stack. I'm originally from Memberton, but moved away in grade 5, grade 6. Grew up in Indian Brook, just outside of Shibanaki. That's where the wildlife park is. If anyone knows. Studiac, when you're driving on the highway, they got that in Macedon. So just for like context. Eventually went to St. Mary's University, studied sociology. Ended up at the University of Guelph, get my master's in sociology. There I studied with Dr. Cecil Foster. And my entire research is on cultural identity and authenticity, post-colonial theory. So how did I end up working for a tech startup in Sydney, Nova Scotia, dealing with social media data? I don't know, it was unplanned. After graduation, I was at a trade show in Halifax for Assembly of First Nations. I was working for Memberton at the time in communication. The booth next to me was Memski Projects Incorporated. And Orenda's founder, Tanya CJ, at the time was Tanya Collier McDonald, she is still a consultant for Memski. So being in the booth next to us, over 2 days, we just started talking. And she started talking to me about this idea she had. And then she started asking me what I did. And I told her about my background in sociology. She said, you know what, that's great. Why don't you give me your contact information, blah, blah. A few weeks later, we meet up. She goes into further, tell me what she envisioned Orenda to be. And she said, I need a social scientist, basically. So, well, all right, cool. My contract actually just ended like the week before, so it was great time. It was a little serendipitous. So that's how I ended up here. It was a cool opportunity. It was, working in something that I had no idea about. I had a lot to learn. So, I've been with them ever since. That was in 2015. Okay, so Orenda Software Solutions. The word Orenda, it's a Wyandotte or Huron word, and it means it's the human will or force that accounts for achievement in opposition to fate or destiny. Or simpler, it's the force that accounts for achievement outside of chance. So things aren't up to destiny or fate. It's what your effort as a human does to define the outcome. It's kind of important to remember for later. It all ties in, I'm sure. So what do we do? Simply, it's a software that refines social media data and clearly states how posts impact a brand's reputation or an organization. So simple enough to do on your own when it's just looking at your mentions. But the point of Orenda was to deal with high volume, large volume. A project that I just finished before holiday break. It was the client just wanted to know this past year, what are our levels like? 25 million tweets in 365 days. Try to do that manually, like that would take you a long time. So that's kind of what inspired Tanya to articulate it. Like her background is in communications, so the Tar Pond and Coke Ovens cleanup project, where her Open Hearth Park is, like that would have led to that. She was the communications person for that. So the key to success for the whole cleanup and Open Hearth Park, I guess, was having public buy-in and communicating what this project was doing to the public and having them determine, well, what do we want to see out of this? So that was her position, that was her job over the whole effort. And every day, her superiors were coming in and saying, oh, I wish I could do that. They were coming in and saying, like, look, we're being mentioned every day on this new, Facebook or Twitter or whatever it was, Reddit at the time, saying, look, we're being talked about in the news and we're being talked about online. Tell me, does this mean anything? Should we be worried about this? And her background in communications, journalism, and public relations, she goes through it, individual post at a time, and have to ask, okay, who's saying this? What are they saying? Does this have potential to trend? Is this going anywhere? And what should we do about it? So doing that manually, day in, day out for months, she had the thought, wouldn't it be great if there was something that could automate the process? I know what I'm doing. I have the same framework every day. The content's not really changing. Why not? So, I got to give a shout out to our early developers finding a way to, program that decision-making tree. Because PR people not necessarily into machine learning or decision-making trees, right? So taking those two very different spheres and bringing them together was a challenge at the time. So the technology, I guess, in a nutshell, is not just telling you like what was mentioned, how often, what was the frequency on what channel, but there's a deeper level of insight. What does it mean to you? Like, why should you be worried about this or not? And that goes beyond sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis is great, but if it's chopping things up by positive, neutral, or negative, with 25 million tweets in those three categories, what does that really tell you? It's 5 million in one, 5 million in another, and 10 million. You really have to sift through that stuff. So based on, after the Open Hearth Park project, after the remediation, Tanya actually went back to school at McMaster. She did her master's in communications management there. And part of that project, she found this old research. And that was the foundation of what she was doing, her framework. So the organization public theory is that organizations and society have this relationship. There's a framework there. Qualitatively, it can be measured. And the patterns that we see between organizations a century ago are the exact same today. Same values. It's the same categories. And it's repetitive. So that's what led to the initial product. And this is just a preview of our dashboard and what it does. So breaks it up by categories, right? Like these are the elements to reputation as society judges them. So there's trust, influence, satisfaction, your social responsibility, etc. So how it works is like any other social listening tool. It goes by keyword, the brand, and then it filters it through category and then through sentiment analysis. So your X amount of tweets are going to belong in trust. They're going to belong in neutral, positive, or negative. But then you get more precise things. We have a 0 to 100 scale. So very precise measurements of, okay, how negative are we talking? And then over time, what does that mean? If you're averaging around 40% per day, if you have a spike to an 80, you're going to want to look into that. If you have a drop to a 10, you're going to want to look into that. So it's just about managing the volume. Other things that we have in there too is like, sometimes you want to go by keyword if you know what to expect, which is often the case with big stories. And then over time, you want to track trends and say, is this part of the normal or is this out of the norm? You can see where an interesting part, maybe you want to focus on a key area and we can organize this data down to state level. Collecting things, what's trending now or over time. So that's going to be important for you, especially if you're you want to line up with market research and stuff like that. So yeah, basically the research that we use is informed. It's similar to the Edmund Trust Barometer, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but it's like the biggest PR firm in the world, and they rank everything according to trust. So you can go and like look at what Canadians trust in their government, and he figured what companies are trustworthy. This is the framework itself that we have. So initially, how it worked was a bag of words approach. We developed a manual dictionary. The tweet went through, filtered by category, so it caught the keyword, and then on our scale, where did it score? The problem with that is words have definitions. They're not always used how they're supposed to be used. Social and cultural context is always changing. So in an example, if someone was saying like a new movie came up, you want reviews, and those are very nuanced a lot of times, and someone is tweeting, well, I liked this part, but I hated this part, and overall it was not bad. Like on an individual word by word, not and bad are going to not work. They're out of context. So how do we overcome that? You got to reject the initial approach. So that was where a lot of our updates come from, is overcoming how language is used. And when you're dealing with a rule-based software, that's difficult because a lot of times people go against the rule. And it's kind of unpredictable until you encounter the problem. There's no way to anticipate, okay, how's this one individual word going to be used in all different verticals, in all different contexts? So that's where we started using TensorFlow and a lot, big data sets, based on organic data. How are people talking about things? And then we're telling it, okay, judge it this way and replicating that. And it's a process, it's constantly going. So part of my job when I first got there was to become a linguist. This is why I know this word is negative or not. And like on the precise level, I know it's gonna fall under 25% or under 15%, and with what confidence. Lately, I've been a statistician, so we've got these huge data sets now that are made up of like years worth of brands, and like where we're going now is into fintech. So what we know about a company, how well is a company doing, what's its value, what price is it being traded at, and these are tracked like by a minute for years. And now we have social data that's kind of matching up with that. So naturally, how does one impact the other? For the first, 19 attempts, there was no relationship. We're starting to find relationships now. It's not universal, but what we are finding is that what people say about a company is going to impact its value. Now to replicate that and to make sure it's consistent and constant, like good scientists, that's a lot of work. So we're partnering up with Reuters now, Thomson Reuters, Globe and Mail for data. We buy from Twitter. There's Icon, and a lot of it's public, but like sometimes it's not. So and not every company is publicly traded either. So getting that and partnering with the client themselves, and then figuring that out. It's a lot of work, but like that's kind of been the pivot. And another thing that we're looking at now is the price of cryptocurrencies. So economists will tell you like how things are traded. They have intrinsic value, but for cryptocurrency there is no intrinsic value. It's kind of just digital. It's there. There's nothing that you can hold. So maybe it's based on sentiment. That's what we're looking into, hoping to find something. Not all coins are the same though. So Bitcoin is the number one right now, and there's thousands of coins underneath that. And it's growing exponentially per day. So just doing the one case study now and looking to replicate that. So basically over time, we get a visual of how your brand is operating with the public, how it's interacting with the public. Uh, this quote I really like: the web is the biggest focus group in the world. It's quantitative and it's always on. Instead of doing market research and doing a survey like Edelman does, they go out every year. That's how they make their trust barometer. They're talking to certain people and like saying, what do you think about this? Conducting interviews. This is just organic data. It's there. Someone cared enough to tweet about a company, the assumption is that it's going to matter. Not always the case, but most of the time it is. You know, I think to get statistically significant results, we only need 67 tweets, and it's good. You know, it means something. It's reliable. I guess is what I'm trying to say. And a big part of our mission is to take these insights and communicate them back to the people that they're being talked about, those organizations. The logic being, when you know better, you do better, and we're trying to give these companies real-time insights to make better informed decisions as they're required, and not in a case like Wells Fargo, who for 2 years knew there was a problem until it broke, and now it's cost them $1 billion in lost revenue and $1 billion in hiring lawyers and accountants and third-party, what are they called, auditors. You know, so that's $2 billion total that they've lost out on. When really they could have been monitoring it and caught it in 2 years before it ever occurred. So just applying that, expand beyond that, right? There's a lot of possibilities. So yeah, that's pretty much a rundown of what we do. His little history on the company, founded in 2015 here in Cape Breton. We have 7 employees right now. In member 2, it's all R&D, all development. Based out of Toronto is our executive suite, so that's where all the sales and client care is going on. So that's where Tanya and her team is. My team and I, we're doing all the research and development here. We communicate online on the phone. When we first got started, we were a regional winner in the Nova Corp I3, so shout out. Thanks for that. We were accepted into the IBM innovation space right after, so that was what kept us going for a long time. We graduated from that in 2016, and we're in the FinTech Sandbox in Boston now, and also Mars Discovery District in Toronto. And that's where a lot of our clients, not our clients, a lot of the people we're talking to, showing this technology to, saying, you need to get into crypto, you need to get into FinTech. Like, that's where, like, we're willing to partner with you. This is who's willing to pay for it. So that was like what inspired the pivot. Initially, it was meant for PR professionals like Tanya, until we showed them a data set, and then they were like, yeah, but where's the content? So instead of dealing with the volume, they wanted to manually go through it. So the numbers is what informed our decisions as a company. So yeah, that's about it, really.
Any questions?
So how much training is involved of the, you know, the library or the client or?
Oh, the library?
Yeah, so you take on a new client and, I don't know, say it's Donald Trump. I mean, if you want to look at a plethora of data possibilities, right?
Yeah.
How do you discern what might be good content versus bad in that, you know?
At first, that was the first project that I took on, was the Canadian election. So looking at who was going to win this election based on social media data. My logic was anyone who cares enough to tweet about a leader probably is going to vote, and it's probably indicative of how they're going to vote. I did a regression on polling numbers and what our data was, and I found an interaction between 2 of our categories in public polling data. And in September, the election being in October, found a relationship, extrapolated that and predicted within, I think it was 0.9% of the actual outcome. But like, so that was one vertical and not much training there. Then the Republican primary started to ramp up and Donald Trump, everyone thought he was a joke. I thought he was a joke. I didn't think he was going to win the primary. So I used the same method and it broke. Like there was just too much. It got to the point of collinearity. So there was too much data. And then that really fudged our numbers. Like it really messed up our numbers and it broke our system. So not applicable universally is what we found first of all. And then how much you have to discern, like a lot in a word, like you can't just take it. Even though Tanya developed it based on her logic, which is informed by research and data, there is error sometimes.
There's still some
yeah. There's always
industry specific or
industry specific thing exactly. Yeah. So we thought the first time we discovered it was in looking at Coca-Cola and like Coca-Cola talking about like freezing and like that wasn't a bad thing, but then looking at computers, that was terrible. So like the word itself was neutral, but in the context in which it's used. So there's always a lot of training. And part of our consultation, whenever we take on a new client, is okay, what are you trying to achieve? And then we do an environmental scan of their data first to kind of look for what's being commonly said about them, what's being said about them in the news. And then creating data sets to kind of train that so that we don't end up with data that's misleading. And we're constantly checking on it. I'm constantly checking it anyway. So there's a lot of QA. Nothing efficient,
right.
But a lot of manual.
So it's really kind of establish that baseline and then look at trends from there.
Yeah, so for TensorFlow, what I try to do is 500 examples of true data, 500 of false data. And I try to have a dictionary of common words in both so that it's not lopsided, so it's really fair. But when you have access to Twitter data, you can get those sets quickly.
Oh yeah, okay.
Maybe a day altogether.
Oh wow.
Okay. Turnaround time. Ordering it though, it's 3 days.
Yeah, having trouble like discerning what's a bot and what's a real person?
Not really, because to deal with influencer weight, that was a big thing. So a tweet from, to be consistent, Donald Trump carries more weight than a tweet from me. So the initial way that we wanted to do that was to have a coefficient, but different influencers, different coefficients, and we couldn't always, be on top of that. There was an influencer. Does anyone know Logan Paul, a YouTuber? And his word's kind of like trash now. So to overcome that, we treated retweets like individual tweets on their own. So an endorsement of a tweet would be treated as the same as a unique post, just to overcome that influencer thing. So someone who's got 10,000 retweets, that's treated as 10,000 unique posts. There's usually a threshold for spam, when it's north of 10,000 tweets, we know it's not real. The chances are it's not real. And just like visually, like in our dashboard, you can see usually like there was an event here, and if there's spam, we can flag it, delete it, and then retroactively score it. Sometimes not always the case. There are some words that are blocked in phrases. RT to win, we don't pick that up ever because it's just.
Oh yeah.
It's
yeah.
How do you deal with a tweet where somebody's embedded that tweet and then they made a comment that is completely contrary to what the original tweet was?
Right. Those would be averaged out.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would follow the mean. And like I was saying earlier, like there's a point where there's too much data, and our system does follow links. And when you're linking a news story, everything is kind of it goes wild sometimes.
Yeah.
But normally with so much, it kind of has an equilibrium.
Is that the problem where there's so much polarization that there's an enormous amount of data on both sides and you can't?
So
filter
it
down, or?
It usually has an equilibrium,
Okay.
but depending on the content too, so, and what you're looking at. So I know for the election one time, NDP, like for mall care, he had more like positive, overly positive sentiment, but was being talked about like 10th of what Harper was being talked about. So dealing with that level of volume, and then yes, overrepresented in positivity. So that's when we had to establish the benchmarks. And
Like, people
industry
really like him, but it's
averages,
only 8% of the population.
Yeah, it's sort of that whole
Exactly.
that adage of any PR is good, you know, any news is good for the brand.
Exactly. So that's why we have to establish industry averages
Wow.
and stuff like that. So that's a big thing that we look at in the vertical, whatever, who are their nearest competitors, and then what are their numbers look like. So if something is overly on a positive or negative, okay, is this an industry trend or is this something unique? And just having to manually go in and monitor that. And
But within a business, having an 8% where it's a niche where it's well served isn't the same as a winner take all kind
yeah,
of
no,
election situation.
yeah. The election situation is a very specific example.
Yeah.
So if you're getting into like, for the holiday season, Apple's new products versus Samsung's new products, like, and it being the holiday season, it's usually overly positive. Now we'll start to see like the equilibrium's coming. So it will kind of, if it does, I'll be surprised if everything stays at the level from day to day. Like it usually changes. There's usually dramatic changes.
What about a situation where you stick with the Apple story, where they've just downgraded
Yeah.
earnings reports, and basically they're saying the three reasons we're doing this, it's China, China, China.
Mhm.
Yet when you look at what people are tweeting, they're saying, yeah, well, my old phone
Yeah.
battery is still great. There's no real significant improvement.
Mhm.
So they're totally not believing that
Yeah.
it's all related to or connected to China. It's just
Yeah.
lack of innovation or lack of product development.
Yeah.
How does that impact?
Yeah. So we have to look at the patterns over time, right, and kind of get into it. So we kind of have to discern what's marketing, what's advertising, what's PR, what's organic, and what's media. Like what's breaking Washington Post news versus Joe Blow's tweet about my phone still works or blah blah blah. That usually comes out in the retweet count and the volume. Not always. It's not foolproof, but always having to go in and kind of, based on the language that is used, it'll be overrepresented in one category.
Okay.
And that's why we have the 8 categories, and like just kind of studying up and like, okay, Apple, and with their price, right? Like, they're a publicly traded company. We know which one of our categories is the key driver to their overall price. So if something's going in a different category, it's usually a red flag or nothing to worry about at all. If it's in that specific category, then we're on it. Like, we have to be ready.
Okay. And then you start to work with the marketing department or whoever within the company and say,
Yeah.
this is an issue, you have to address it. And
Yeah, this is what it means usually, because even with like the dashboard, it's meant for people to look at huge volumes of data. Nobody wants to do it. They want me to tell them when to look at it. So it's become this thing. So like part of my job too is client care. Like, I don't do it with clients, man. I'm a researcher. So like, oh, how do you, hello, blah, blah. And like, at first there was like this real anxiety of like, I didn't want to bring them bad news, but they want bad news. Like, they want it now. Like, they want to know. Like, so I don't try to like create it up and say, look, log into your account, look at this category, look at these numbers. This is what I think is going on, and you should probably check with your team. But again, that's their decision. They have their own data usually too. Like
right.
they use, there's how many different social media monitoring softwares out there. There's like Meltwater, Google, and Watson. IBM's got one too. That's it's cool. But they all kind of do their own different thing, right? And the same thing with sentiment, like sentiment analysis, you can get free APIs on them, like anyway. Get like 2 or 3, give them the same set. They come up with different outcomes all the time. So it's not so much like, we're not looking for consistency, it's the discrepancies that you want to look into and why. So when we have a discrepancy, that's usually the, okay, is this industry-wide or is this very specific? And then like being able to chop it up by location and day, very, very cool stuff. So knowing that a trend started in Toronto versus California, like, gives context, I guess, to why we're looking.
Any more questions? Thanks, Tyler.
No problem.
You don't stick around for a couple minutes in case
Yeah.
people didn't want to show anything
Yeah,
out.
no problem.